Hi, this is Rick for EDU Mobile. In this discussion, I want to cover something that is very quick but very important. I want to talk about the relationship between Model View Controller and the tab bar controller and navigation controller that we just discussed. So the question is, where do we put the model? The model class should obviously only be instantiated once within our application. If we have only one model class in our app, we may have more, but each model class should only be instantiated once. The reason for this is that each object of type model that we make will have its own properties. And this is bad because if multiple controllers instantiate the same model, they're not going to be looking at the same data unless we set up a bunch of class methods to bring that data in. So we want to only look at one instance of any particular model. So the question is, with tab bar controllers and navigation controllers that contain many other controllers, where do we instantiate the model? Well, with tab bar controllers, we instantiate the model in the tab bar controller instance itself. And this means that we're going to need to subclass the tab bar controller in order to put a model property in it. Each view controller in a tab bar collection, though, has a property tab bar controller of type UI tab bar controller that can be used to access the properties of that tab bar controller, including a model that we might instantiate within it. Of course, .tab bar controller is of type UI tab bar controller. It's not our tab bar controller, it's any tab bar controller. So to access an actual instance, we have to cast it to the actual class of our tab bar controller itself. So how does that look? Well, let's say we have a tab bar controller. I've called it my tab bar controller, and it has a property of type model called model. Now over here in the red ellipse here, I have a model class, and it has a method called method. And then I have two controllers that are under this tab bar controller, and that would be represented by two tabs. And then in each of those controllers, I can get to the model by saying my tab bar controller star tab, I'm calling it just tab, equals, and then we have to cast self.tabBarController to the type my tab bar controller. And then we can just say tab.model and then call the method on that. So this is kind of the same thing we do with navigation controllers, the same kind of code, except we're going to use a different property. But with tab bar controllers, we can see that we can very easily access a single model instantiated within the tab bar controller itself. So with navigation controllers, again, the same general rules apply. However, instead of .tab bar controller, we have .navigation controller for each view controller inside a navigation controller hierarchy. So the model is instantiated either in the navigation controller or, in the case of table views, in the table view controller. And the table view controller is the root view controller of the navigation controller. Now, we'll talk about, when we talk about table view controllers, we'll talk about why we put the model here rather than in the navigation controller. But the key idea here is we put the model, and we'll look at this in the next slide, we put the model at the highest level in our app's view controller hierarchy that makes sense. So the general guidelines are these. We instantiate only a single model only once in an app. Now, if our app has many model classes, and that's possible, we could be looking at many different sets of data within an application, particularly a larger application. This is not unusual at all. But each model should only be instantiated once. A model should be instantiated at the highest level possible in the application's view controller hierarchy. Use these properties of view controllers. Use tab bar controller and navigation controller to access the model from view controllers. Thank you very much.